As the May long weekend approaches, a number of cottage communities are expressing deep concern about the idea of more people settling in. And for a closer look at these concerns, we are joined this morning by Norfolk County Mayor Crystal Chop. Thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Ontario's Premier is asking cottagers to stay home this weekend, but stop short of putting a ban in place. What are you concerned about?
Well, I think the Premier's been asking people to stay home for some time now, and I believe I just saw an article on the weekend that the number of cottagers has effectively doubled from what we've seen in years past. So it's a really big concern locally here. We have, limited access to, supplies for basic commodities in our stores. Across Haldimand and Norfolk counties, we have 5 ventilators. One of our hospitals actually has 1 ICU bed and 1 ventilator only. So, there's a great concern with our local residents here that we don't have a big margin for error.
Your county has issued an order that forbids anyone whose primary residence is located outside the region from even visiting their properties and could face fines of up to $5,000. How do you plan to police and enforce that?
It's very difficult. In fact, that was the question that I asked the Premier on the phone call. Wasn't so much about actually our seasonal cottagers, but myself and other mayors are in cottage countries are seeing huge issues with day trippers and tourists still coming into town, and so that's really the biggest concern I think for all of us is how do we enforce this? Whereas you're seeing in other provinces, like in Quebec and so on, where you've got road checks and stops to make sure that people are heading to legitimate destinations for essential travel. So it is a big concern here on how we will be able to enforce.
Well, and this seems to be where the big divide is between people who own their cottages, pay property tax that goes to the county, or between people who want to come up and rent or just stay for the weekend. What do you say to owners who push back and say, look, we have every right to be here. We help to keep the town running?
Honestly, personal property rights are fundamentally one of the reasons that I ran in politics, and my belief that there has been too much intrusion by the government. However, in this stage, I think everybody is suffering. Why is it under the rules to date that you've been able to buy a fridge in an emergency situation at Walmart, but you can't from the local store? You can buy clothing at Joe Fresh, but you can't in our local businesses. Are you planning on refunding property taxes to all the businesses that have been shut down for months? Are parents going to ask for a portion of their education tax back for their kids that they're educating at home? What about the people that have cottages in Quebec or down in the U.S. that aren't able to visit them? So, there is a fundamental injustice across the board here. Same thing, we're talking about opening up trailer parks or marinas now, in addition to the cottages, and the Premier, like he's saying, that's coming. Marinas have been able to prepare, but there's no discussion of the trailer parks reopening. And to me, that is an injustice. That's somebody else's seasonal cottage. What's good for the goose should be good for the gander kind of thing. So I think there's been, I think there's a lot of inequities. I sympathize with the property owners. But at the same time, this could also be one of the most consequential moments in our history. And I think that we all have a collective responsibility to do our part.
Mayor Chop, if you run into anyone in the parking lot at the grocery store that is not a local, will you tell them to go home?
I don't think I would have any way of knowing that they weren't. I think that really is a matter that's left to our bylaw and our enforcement.
Oh, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thanks very much.
Thanks for watching. If you like this, be sure to subscribe here.
And you can check out more Your Morning videos right here.